3, 2, 1, and we are live.
Hi, folks. Welcome. We're getting better. Welcome to our Saturday Night Live. This is where I answer questions for you. Tonight's topic is Moxon Vise. We've had all kinds of people asking over the last 6 months to a year about solving a problem. We finally solved it. So we'll talk about that and demonstrate it. This is also, we do this in support of our Purple Heart Project, which is a program that we conduct 6 times a year. Each class, one class a month, April through October, with the exception of August. And in that class, we bring in 7 combat wounded veterans from all over the world, far away as Australia, Ireland, Denmark, mostly the United States, Canada. And we teach them how to build a piece of furniture. We teach them the skills that would have been required to build a piece of furniture as if it was 200 years ago. Yeah, it's 6 days long, very long days. We start it. They show up at 7 in the morning, and we're here till 10 or 10:30 at night. Includes their meals. We house them, we feed them, we fly them in. Each vet takes home approximately $4,000 worth of premium tools. And thanks to our bench brigade, we actually have a bench built to our specs and delivered to their home so that they can continue to do this. It turned out to be very therapeutic for guys suffering from everything from post-traumatic stress disorder to traumatic brain injuries, physical injuries, all as a result of combat. So, without any further ado, and we'll do a little more general stuff as the night goes on. Frick, do you have a question for me?
Sure. First question is from Don Trust in South Park, Pennsylvania.
Hi, Don.
He says, have you ever considered using a dovetail alignment board? I've used one for years.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But in case you don't understand what Don's talking about, it's a means of putting your piece of wood in the vise and having it standing plumb. I think it's also something that he uses to line the 2 pieces up. But I do this way. I just take my square, I hold it like that. I push against and tighten it up place. Now, the new Moxon Vise, I'll introduce it as the new and improved. This was the final copy. Sits on your bench like so. I'm just showing you this to address that issue. Tighten up the vise, or tighten up the clamp. To hold your workpiece in so that it is, oh, wait a minute now, come on. You want this to be standing plumb. Take this piece, put your look at that, I got some glue in there. I didn't get rid of, or didn't see. So take your workpiece, put it like that. Open up your jaws. Drop your piece down. Obviously that automatically squares it up. Lock it in place. That sits back down there. There's a couple of magnets on the bottom. Now the problem has always been, how do you replace what we always used to do, which was we would use a plane on its side like this, lock that in place, slip that back, put your tailboard over top of your pin board, and transfer tails to pins. In this case, what you do is you flip this piece up, put that piece on, and now do the same thing. When you're done, that drops down, the magnets hold it there. The first one we did, we used dowels. And the problem with the dowels, which I thought was actually going to be a better solution, but turned out it wasn't. Irv, can you put your hand right there for a second, just so I can grab another clamp, so that thing won't fall over. Thank you. So this one had 2 dowels in it. And then you would set it up like that and set that piece on the dowels. The problem was that when we went to do it on another one, this distance back here was a little shorter than this. So there wasn't room for the dowels. Either way works. Magnets is probably easier. This was Jake's idea. Frick, question.
Jim in Corona, California wants to know,
Hi, Jim.
can you buy just the hand wheels?
Yeah, yes. Woodcraft sells, no, not just the hand wheels. I'll show you what comes in the kit. So if you want to do your own, by the way, I got a special guest coming on tonight, 8 o'clock, Kip Christensen. I'll tell you about Kip in a minute. So here's what your options are. For people that don't want to build it, minus this piece, we make the Moxon Vise. So that literally comes, you take it out of the box and you clamp it on your bench. Or you can buy the kit to do your own. Now, I'll show you what we do to the kit over how it comes standard. I'll use my Jeff O'Connor knife. So it comes with, I don't know what, you need those instructions. There's the nut, this, I'll show you what comes standard and then I'll show you what we do. We add this, we add these, we add these. There's your 2 threaded rods. There's your 2 spin wheels. And we add this. So if you buy the kit just as a woodcraft item, your wheels just come like that. So we drill and tap them so that you can add these. This is probably the single biggest advantage, is being able to turn these. Otherwise, it's a pain to sit there and try to spin that hand wheel. So now you just, so fast and so easy. The springs are really nice. That was Jake's idea. The springs are nice because you don't need a third hand. It pulls the jaws back for you automatically. In other words, you're having to back this off and pull that and back and pull. These are oil impregnated bushings. So instead of the threaded rod wearing the wooden hole, the hole drilled through the wooden vise out, there's a bushing in there that's permanently oiled. And the crubber. So this stuff is a cork and rubber combination. It's got a self-adhesive back. And we use that to line the inside of the jaw. And it does a much better job of gripping. Not only is it easy on the piece you're holding onto, but it also gives it a lot more grip. So you can buy just this. That's what comes in the kit. And then what we do to upgrade it, what we do to upgrade it is drill and tap the handles. Willie does that for us, and add these parts. Now, so you can buy that. You can buy that. You can get this from us, which is an entire kit. Or you can also buy, we sell these separately. People want to build their own. I understand that perfectly. Or you can buy that, buy it all done. But the other huge advantage of the Moxon Vise, there's 2 of them. One is that your entire workpiece gets held, and you can make these as big as you want. The one that we do has a capacity of 16 inches. So you drop your piece down in here and it's held across its entire width. And I don't know if people really appreciate that, but if you're using a traditional vise and you're only able to grab half of the board, the other half of the board is flopping around. This is so nice and solid when you have it's securely held like that. It saws better, it feels better. Oh my. Nothing like a good vise.
So you kind of
grip.
answered it, but
And your height too. So it gives you, what are you saying, Frick?
well, you kind of answered it. But John Root was asking,
John who?
John Root from the chat.
Hey, John.
He says, why use a Moxon vise over other vices?
I'm just going to show you. So I always tell people, I said, you want to keep your board fairly low in the vise so it's nice and solid. Again, if it's up here, it's going to vibrate. So it moves, in this case, it moves, so 2.5 inches. I'm just going to tell you how 2.5 inches to, so you, 2.25, it raises up your workpiece 2.25 inches, which is comfortable. So I mean, I have not been a big Moxon Vise user. It got thrust upon me, and I started playing around with it. And there's times when it's really convenient, especially if you don't have a decent bench. I keep forgetting who told us about this, but if you look at this, we've added this Moxon Vise, and the chap that had this idea, I thought was genius. He said the most stable piece of equipment in the shop was his table saw. So he put a Moxon Vise on the end of his table saw, and now you can work right there. Really convenient. Very convenient. Next, Rick.
Just a second, I have one here.
I just want to show you who's coming on. If you're not into turning and you're interested, it's really nice to learn how to turn properly. Follow me over here. Actually, I don't think I have one of those. When I say turn properly, might be a few people that get offended at that, but no, well, wouldn't be the first person I've offended. Probably not the last. Not always intentional. Just looking for a piece of pine to put in the vise or in the jaw. Didn't mean to say either one of those. I meant to say put a piece of wood in the lathe. So let me cut this up. I've got a block of pine that is about 1.5 inches thick. Now, if you want to mount a spindle, just draw diagonals, corner to corner. Sometimes I can guess it. Give you your center. And I'll show you a little something that I do. Now I'm doing this in the process of introducing you to Kip. I turn spindle work, I just turn between two points. Most people would use a center like that, which gives you more grip, but it also means that if your tool catches, it's going to grab. So I'll just line up. And that's usually all I need. So when I say learn to turn properly, what I'm talking about is using, somebody else has been using that. It's not sharp. A shearing cut. A lot of people today will use carbide scrapers. The only problem is that it really, if you want to learn how to turn, you have to learn how to shear, whether you're using a gouge or this is called a skew. But it allows you to go in there and be extremely fine. Your detail will be greatly enhanced. So Kip, who retired as the head of the woodworking department at BYU in 2020, has been doing this most of his life. He's a very accomplished, you can come in, he's a very accomplished wood turner, internationally recognized. I know he's written more than one book, but this is one that he did back in, I don't remember the year, 25th anniversary of this Utah Symposium. And this features the work of a lot of the artists that have taught there over the years. Dale started that back, I think it says 1979. Anyway, Kip's work's in there as well. Beneath the Bark. I'll show you a few of the pieces that he and I traded work with over the years. You want to come in closer? So he made this for me in I don't think he has a date on it. He doesn't. But I think this goes back to the late 80s. So this is a lidded vessel. The body's made out of Macassar ebony. There's a Gaboon ebony inlay right there, and this is spalted maple. But I know when Kip turns these, he turns them, lets them dry, and does that numerous times so he gets it as stable as possible. So for a lidded jar to work that well, so I want you to get some idea of the fit. It's a very comfortable fit, but the fact that I can spin it around like that without it binding means it's extremely stable. It has not changed shape, and that's the way that he treats them over time, not rushing it. But I always like the detail. If you look closely at the detail in the profile, you'll see what kind of a turner he is. Very precise work. So I had him come up here last fall. I had him come in and spend a week. And I think 5 of our guys took this class, and I wanted him to teach them how to turn, so I wouldn't have to be turning chisel handles the rest of my life. So he demonstrated the bowl, so I gave him a piece of dry Claro walnut, and he turned this for them. Just nice shape. That's how it's finished on the bottom. And it's always you'll never find a bumpy, use your fingers like a pair of calipers, and you'll just feel how it flows nicely. And this is something else he gave me. This is just a little container to hold pencils. It's got leather in the bottom. And again, you look at the detail. So if that turns your crank, we are having him come back the first week of September. He's going to do 2 classes. The first one is going to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'll give you the dates. Should be able to find them. Okay, it is September 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Now that one is going to be on spindle turning, kind of more of a beginner's class, but an introduction to spindle turning. And then the 5th, 6th, and 7th, which is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, is going to be an advanced class. You can take both, and that will get into bowls and lidded vessels and things like that. So I asked Kip to come on. He'll be on in about a half an hour, 35 minutes, and do a 15-minute question and answer and kind of introduce himself to you and give you a chance to pick his brain. If you're interested in the class, there are spots still available. We have housing right here on the premises if you want to stay here. It includes your meal, your lunch, and then the facility is fantastic. We went out and we bought, I'll introduce you to the lathe. Frick, give me a minute. So this is a General 260. So if you're not familiar with General, company started, I think, in 1946 in Drummondville, Quebec. And they were I think they were the last North American manufacturer of woodworking equipment. They closed in 2015, I think, is when they went out of business. But this, so they made two lathes, the 160 and the 260. The 260 was the heavier of the two. Variable speed. Now this version has a taller, a greater swing, meaning the gap between the bed and the center of the spindle. The rest of them are a little bit smaller than that. But it's a good, stable lathe, doesn't vibrate, move around on you. Variable speed, as I mentioned. And we also did, we get it because it's my favorite lathe, and we wanted everything to be interchangeable. Most all my equipment in here, with the exception of the table saw, is general. I'll try to find out what the price is. I should tell you that, but I don't know right off the top of my head. Question, Frick?
Yep. Chris from the chat says, what's the best wood to build a Moxon Vise from?
Oh, well, we do ours out of poplar, and the reason is you don't have to beat yourself up. You can make them out of maple. Wood's just a little bit harder. This one is actually, this prototype I did is out of pine, and I compensated, I think, by making it a little bit thicker. It's 2 inches thick. The poplar, well, the poplar is almost 2 inches thick, so if you're going to go with a softwood, just be heavy enough. But you know what? People use way too much force. All you need is enough to hold it so that it doesn't move when you're working it. So that's plenty, and that's rock solid. That's not going to move on you. So I would say anything, softwood or hardwood. You want it to be flat, you want it to be stable, that's a given. You don't want it moving on you. And you want the two faces, the face of this piece and the face of that piece, need to meet. So in other words, they need to be flat. I used a piece of Baltic birch. I'll walk you through it. A piece of Baltic birch on the bottom. That's 3/4 Baltic birch, which actually is 11/16 because they're metric. So a piece of Baltic birch, and that's screwed and glued to the bottom of this piece. Your holes have to be drilled through both. And then there's a nut on either side. So this threaded rod, and you can bring the threaded rod out as far as you want. Again, how often are you going to have something in here that's more than an inch? I admit there's probably times when you might be cutting something 1.5 inches, but certainly 95% of what you're going to do is under 1 inch in thickness. So for that reason, I don't have these threaded rods sticking out this way any more than that amount. In other words, it's something you're always going to be bumping into, or you bust your knuckles on when you're turning these. So I keep them fairly short, so you can move it out the back side, and then there's a nut on either side, so that locks that in place. And there's a washer here. Didn't put a washer on the inside. This piece, this jaw. Let me see if I can take it off. So there's the bushing. So that's sitting in there. There's a larger diameter hole drilled on this side. So you always got to drill your larger diameter hole gets drilled first. No, I said that wrong. Now I got to think. Oh yeah, the larger diameter gets drilled first. So I drilled the larger diameter, and it came to within about 3/8 of an inch of coming through. And then you still have the center hole, so you can go in and drill your second hole, which will be perfectly centered in the larger diameter hole, and that's the one that holds up that bronze ring. We put a little washer on the inside of that, and that washer on the inside and the big washer on the outside keeps that bushing in place. Your spring, the spring fits on here. That's really simple. And then this hole is large enough so that when this closes, the nut goes up inside this piece. You could put it in that one if you wanted, but we did it in this one. That one came off. What else? I think now. You might wonder. Of course, when we put this on, you got to cut around there, so you have lots of space. You may be wondering about the slope on here. I'll show you that too. And I put a big washer on the outside again so that you're not wearing away your wood all the time. This is, I can't stress enough how advantageous these little knobs are, because when you're sitting there turning like that, it just turns into a pain. So when I'm sawing a piece, look at that. What a slick idea. When I'm sawing a piece, it's nice to be able to get down here, especially if I'm doing half blinds, where you have to be able to you're sawing on a 45-degree angle or something like it, rather than have this piece sticking way out here, which I'd be cutting into it. The fact that this is beveled back means it stays out of the way of my saw. We did the same thing on the back side. I'll just, so you know, let me measure that angle and tell you what it is.
12.
How many?
12.
That was your guess? It is 20 degrees. The back one's 20, the front one's not 20. See what the front one is. $10, $20, $30. 30 degrees in the front, 20 in the back. Don't ask me why I did that. I just did. Probably because you didn't need it so much on the back side. Yeah, and that's it. It's really simple. There's not a whole lot to it. Oh, I should note this as well. So we keep that front jaw. The front jaw is longer than this jaw. I'll show you why. You want, when you put this in place, you want the front of your bench to be an extension of that back jaw. So by having the front jaw hanging over a little bit, or hanging a little bit lower, when you put this in place like that, it keeps this face of your bench flush with the face of that back jaw. So you're not, if there's any offset there, you may end up leaving a mark on your board. Simple. Next frick. That one was that question started off as what wood to use, and I think you can use anything. I don't see any disadvantage to any particular type other than the fact that expense. But you're not gaining no advantage to using a hardwood over a softwood, as far as I can tell.
All right, McBen Burns from the chat says.
What's his name?
Ben Burns.
Ben?
Yeah.
Hi, Ben.
How wide is too wide for a Moxon vise?
Well, my shop is about 26 feet wide, so I guess you wouldn't want any wider than that. I don't know. What's the widest? What's the widest thing you're going to cut? Most of the chests of drawers that I do are probably 20 inches wide. I can't imagine. I haven't cut dovetails in anything wider than 24 inches, even a chest. So let's say 24 inches is the largest piece that you're going to end up cutting dovetails on. So then that's the case, and you never need more than 24 inches in between the two rods. So that would 16. So I would have to add an extra 8 inches. So I'd be out to there, and that's not extreme. Other than the fact that the bigger it is, the heavier it is, and that you're having to lift it and store it somewhere when you're not using it. And I don't think you're ever going to get in a situation where you're not going to get support because you're not going to support your piece well enough because it's been too wide. I suppose if I made one that was going to be 30 inches, I might make this jaw a little bit beefier, but I still don't think this will ever be an issue. So no sense making it wider than what the widest piece that you're ever going to use. In other words, what advantages are to doing that? Other than using up a lot of material and a bigger piece to have to store when you're not using it. Next, Rick.
Just a quick question, not related to the Moxon vise, but Andy in the chat wants to know if it's possible to dovetail all 6 sides of a box.
Dovetail all 6 sides of a box. Well, you could do, I'm assuming he's talking about dovetailing the bottom and the top. How would you get it open? Well, you typically never dovetail on the side. You know, if you tried dovetailing on the side of a board as opposed to on the end, all your strength comes dovetailing on the end. These pieces aren't going to break. But if you cut a dovetail on that side,
he says it'd be a sealed box for ashes, so you wouldn't have to open it.
Well, I suppose you could do that. But here's the only problem you're going to encounter. If you try cutting dovetails in the side of a board, not a lot of strength. That wouldn't happen. That wouldn't happen smacking it this way. There's no way you're going to break it. But there's no strength. There's no strength. I can break it with my thumb. So don't cut your dovetails on the side. I want to show them how many people we have on, Frick.
266.
Okay, I want to show you our tool cabinet that is officially done, if you haven't already seen it. So we started this, any idea, Frick, when?
150 episodes ago. So we do the math.
So 150 divided by 3.
So it'd be a year ago.
Huh?
It'd be a year.
Yeah, about a year ago.
Well, actually, no, more than that. I was thinking 3 episodes a week.
Well, that's what we try to get in, with the exception of when we're doing classes. 150? So that's 50 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's been over a year. Anyway, so the idea, if you're seeing this for the first time, the idea behind this was to fill it with tools and somehow use it as a fundraiser for the Purple Heart Project. We're still trying to figure that part out. That's the hardest part. So I'll spin this around, hopefully not spilling all the contents. So I wanted it to be finished all the way around. So we made we made our own walnut plywood, and everything is set in, so it's just a little bit of a reveal all the way around. So it's a nice clean back, made out of walnut with accents in aspen. Bumpy floor. So I'll close it in the end. I'll show you what we did, the last thing we did. The back, Chris was mentioning how it lightens it up. So the back is actually birch. So the plywood was birch on one side, walnut on the other. Let me correct you myself. So I took Baltic birch plywood, and I got rid of a layer of the veneer, the Baltic veneer, and I replaced it with some walnut veneer that I had to glue the pieces together. But anyways, that makes it nice and light inside. I'll start on this side. So all the tools that you see are going to come with it. Now these are all held in place with a magnet, but I didn't want the magnets to be shown. Sometimes looks a little tacky. So the magnets are installed from the back side, so you don't see anything there, but you feel it when you approach. Same thing with the squares. The magnets are in behind. There's a little track, I don't know if you can see it. There's a little track on there that will hold that in place, and the magnet's good and strong. Same thing on the 6-inch. 6-inch has got 2 magnets. One last thing I mentioned the other day I was going to do, I put leather underneath everything. I'm going to cut a piece of leather in there to put underneath the mallet. So you've got your mortise and gauge rod, your small diameter mark and gauge cutter. I use that for going into, I use it as a router plane for adjusting the depth of a mortise. So it's a small diameter and it's a really stout cutter, so you don't have to worry about breaking it. And because it's the rod, to switch those out, you simply loosen that, take that one off, put the other rod in, so it's nice and convenient. So you've got 2 marking gauges. You've got your 12-inch steel rule on this side. You got your 6-inch rule on this side. In behind, you have your 12-inch combination square. There's your Kerf X10 for finishing your half-blind dovetails. And we go to the other side. You have your brace, which Ernie, friend of Luther's, completely restored. And there's your bits from 1/4 inch up to 3/4. The 12 stands for the number of quarters, and that's hinged on the side. And you can just take those out. These are, I think they're brand new. They're just freshly sharpened. You got your flush trim saw in here that sits into that little pocket. You've got this is a full set of fish bits. These brad points are incredibly sharp. The best bit I've ever come across. Now we added a few. We filled into some of the spots with some other sizes, and that just sits on that little pin, so it stays put. Your rubber mallet, your egg beater. Let me take this out. And there's the handle that fits in here, so you can hold it more securely. And this has a spot up in the top where you can store bits. Don't know if you even realized that. And this is another one that Ernie has restored. And this one is a variable speed. So 1 speed, move that over and it goes to a faster speed. Or a number of revolutions for every turn of the handle. I'm going to take that off. And then tucked in on the left side is a pair of winding sticks made by Jesse Rufiange. Jesse's a combat wounded vet that does a lot of work for us. Now this is not the set that's going to be in here, but they will be bird's eye. These are lightly roasted, torrefied bird's eye maple. This one's a second. This one's got a knot hole, so we'll have a good pair in there. I just haven't found one yet to replace it with. That sits in there nice and neat. Close that when you want to close the door. So in your center section, on this side you have your rip saw. It fits nicely into your, what do we call these, Frick, do you remember?
What, sorry?
What do we call this? I can't remember.
I can't either.
What Moose? Sawtill, thank you, Chris. And that locks there. Willie made us the brass pieces. Over here is your 3 main saws, dovetail, crosscut, and medium tenon. And they're stacked in there based on their frequency of use. So dovetail gets the most use, so that's the one out front. Crosscut, medium tenon in the back. Small 12-ounce hammer. Just happened to find one black, so it went with everything else. Over here, I'm going to drop right down to the bottom now. So there's your 5.5, which is my most common plane. Nice leather surface underneath all the planes. This one is drilled for your grip. This is what we use on the shooting board. Need the place to keep that, so that sits up in here, surrounded by your fret saw and your coping saw. There's the Canadian quarter from 2014 when they honored the vets. That's the poppy. So it's got the maple leaf. It's made in Canada. And then, of course, the whole thing that we're doing this for is for the vets, so that's the poppy. So I needed a magnet. This is held in place with a pin, but also a magnet. I need something that the magnet would stick to. So couldn't find. There's no way you'll ever find a drill bit that fits in the diameter of a Canadian quarter. So I went over to the lathe because I learned to turn. Went over to the lathe, took a piece of holly, turned out the middle so it would fit the quarter. Then I turned the outside to fit an 1.25 inch hole. I was able to drill that. Come on, go in there.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Tim in the chat says, how thick is the ply between the magnet and the tool in the toolbox?
How thick is the ply between the what?
The magnet and the tool in the toolbox.
Oh, well, that's solid wood. So there's probably less than a 1/16. but I put them in a cup. So I don't know if you know this, but if you use the steel cup with your magnet, can you explain that, Chris? Well, you could just fake it. It concentrates the force and makes it a whole lot stronger. So if you want to increase the strength of your magnet, and what's nice is they're drilled and countersunk, so you can screw that in, and then your magnet fits in there. So I used that to strengthen the magnets. So there's lots of pull on that. There's no way that that's going to fall out. Same thing here. All right, so this is my drawer bottom plane, another Jesse Ruffiange product. That fits in there. So I use this anytime I'm building a set of drawers. I use that to cut the groove to house the bottom in the drawer. I much prefer to do that as opposed to a table saw or router. Lee Nielsen small router plane fits right in here. Down here we have, I showed you the 5.5. We have 3/4 shoulder plane and your block plane. Again, surface underneath is leather, just kind of softens everything. Now, down here you have your drawers, and you want the drawers to be able to be locked. So this is our adjuster. This is the mini. The mini fits the number 3 and the number 4. This makes it so much easier to adjust your blade instead of trying to turn a knob, which is almost impossible. You can do that with these what do you want to call them? What do we call those? Spokes? Spokes? So when you turn that all the way down, it drops 3 brass pins that lock your drawers so you can't open your drawers. And then when you spin it the other way until the center pin comes up to the middle, now you can open your drawers. There's a little brass piece with a hole in it, and the pin drops into that hole. And there's your little trays, and the trays are designed. You like that smell? Oh, I like that. The trays double your capacity of your drawer. The little tiny dovetails on there, I think I mentioned that. So you have 3 drawers, and they fit the way a Cosman drawer should fit. Construction is obviously dovetails with through wedge tenons wherever there's a piece coming across. So there's a through wedge tenon actually buried in there. The construction's, there is a dowel in back, but there's through wedge tenons underneath here. Now, when you want to lock it up, we had to have a mechanism for holding this in place so that when you're pulling tools off, the door didn't move. So we came up with this idea, had built the prototype, and then Willie made us the real ones. Spring loaded so that when it's not being used, you don't have a bolt sticking out this side. You just have 2 nice little round flush pieces of brass. So this one closes. There's a strip on the side here, and then you undo this one. When they're closed, your saw clears them. Don't have to worry about that. Close this. Now, when you close this one, this strip is farther out, so it holds that one in place. And the last thing we did was to do our little lock with, there. Isn't that neat? That was a lot of work.
Rex Hansen wants to know if you need a hoist to move it, or can 2 people lift and carry it?
Oh, Rex, you can pick it up with 1 arm. It's heavy. It's solid. It is solid. I would guess and say it weighs 100 pounds. Maybe a little bit more. I had Jeff O'Connor try to move it, but he couldn't. He needs more time at the gym. Nice and neat. The accent wood is brass. The accent metal is brass. Now, here's a question for you. I was telling to Jake the other day, I said, should we have these? Trying to find the right hardware is difficult because rarely do they have exactly what you want. I wanted something that was going to be flush. I wanted something that didn't necessarily interrupt the flow in the front. Certainly didn't want a knob that stuck out because when it's closed up, I want everything to be on one plane. And they only came in antique brass. Now, I assume if we were to sand that, it would be shiny brass. But then I thought, as it is right now, you notice it, but it doesn't jump in your face. Whereas over here, although you definitely see the polished brass, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items. This little brass pin down here. That little brass pin sticking out, that is the pivot pin for the sawtill, the one on either side. So I don't think, and there's, of course, this little escutcheon. Did I pronounce that right? Jake was here, he'd tell me. I think it's called an escutcheon. It's a French word. That I don't mind. But this, I think it should be left alone. You tell me if you think something different, if that should be polished brass as well. I don't think so. All right, start the bidding. Our problem is we're in New Brunswick, Eastern Canada. So we would have to go by New Brunswick rules, which would involve getting a gambling license if you're trying to do this legitimately. I want to raffle it. I don't want to auction it. Auction it, there's only a few people that could afford it. Raffle it, everybody gets a crack at it. Everybody gets to participate and have a chance at winning it. But there's all kinds of rules and guidelines. We are a 501c3 in the United States, and in Canada we have the same status. So we have to make sure that everything is squeaky clean, because after, I think, 2 years of having that status, you get rated, and you want to be high on the ratings so that people can trust you when they donate their sacred funds to you. And we use our funds to take care of vets. Question, Frick?
Question comes from Ralph Smith in the chat.
Ralph Smith?
Yep.
Hi, Ralph.
He says, is there value to building a Moxon Vise into your woodworking bench?
Yeah, in fact, Jake is, this winter, Jake decided we're going to go and we're going to build a Moxon Vise into all of our benches out here. So he's going to have, it'll just be right, right on the side of the bench. There'll be 2 holes bored. These threaded rods will be inserted, so you'll have that jaw with your, I think it should be detachable, because it interferes with, if you're planing along here, you don't want to have that thing sticking in. So as long as it doesn't interfere with the rest of your bench. For instance, if I'm planing a long board, my hip is running right along the face of my bench. And that's always been, that's almost a guide. It helps you plane more accurately. So I definitely wouldn't want this in the way. People say, well, what about having this Scandinavian shoulder vise? And that certainly interrupts that, but I've never, I guess I've grown up with it, so it's never bothered me. But yeah, maybe it would be, I would see adding it to the end. That would be, it could be permanently added to the end and wouldn't be a problem at all. But then this is where you typically have your tail vise that supports your long board that you have. You could do it on this end. You could do it on that end. And for the same reason I mentioned, I've never let this bother me, you could have it right there. So, yeah. In fact, that must be, I bet that's what Jake's talking about. I was thinking this configuration when I said that, but I think his plan was to add a Moxon vise to the opposite end of each bench so that you essentially had 2 vices instead of having to use that one to do both. I'm pointing that way. On our vise, or on our bench, you have one traditional bench vise that doubles as holding your stock for when you're planing and for holding your piece when you're cutting dovetails, cutting mortise and tenons, whatever. Next, Rick.
I don't know what this goes along with the same answer, but Dom C in the chat says, can you...
Dom, is that Dom of Dovetail fame?
Possibly.
Combat Wounded Marine, EOD? Dom, tell me if that's you.
He
so
says,
I can tell everybody how great your dovetails were.
Can you explain how you would build a Moxon vise into your workbench as the face vise?
I'm waiting for Dom to tell me who he is. Tell me when he speaks up. How would I do it? Well, I'm going to work under the assumption that you're talking about the Cosman workbench. So the Cosman workbench is made up of either 3 1-inch pieces of Baltic birch or 3 1-inch pieces of MDF. So I'm on this end. I don't have one here to... I don't have one here. Have I got one close enough? Give me just a second, see if I can grab one. Howdy, boys. Hey. Hey, grab the end of that. Help me steer this into the. Watch yourself. Oh, hey, you got to pay attention to where we're going. Now, hey, Coop, pull that blue container back, please. Okay. Beckham, can you push that cart just a little bit that way? Okay, good. Okay, steer, push it over. Attaboy. Wonderful. Put yourselves in for a raise.
Okay.
Double your pay, okay?
All right.
Go find out how much 2 times 0 is.
Okay.
Come back and let me know. All right, so here's our, is it? Yeah, that's good math. Back to school. What?
That's his pay. 2 times 0.
All right, so here's the bench we're talking about. So is Jake on?
Yep.
Ask him if he's talking about in this case, the left side of the, I'm almost positive he's talking about the left side of the vise, the left side of the bench.
It is Dom the vet, by the way.
Hey, Dom.
Dom Chavez.
Dom, I got to brag about Dom's dovetails. Don't let me forget. I'll ask the question first. So, Jake actually did this. I just didn't have time to find the bench he did it in. So you don't need any jaw here. You've got to put these 2 rods in. So the easiest way to put these rods in would be to drill a hole, the outside diameter of the threads. And I would drill that in, and I have another hole that I would drill partially up through that you could then put a nut on in there. And then you have another nut here. So you're squeezing a nut, you're squeezing the rod, you got a nut here and a nut here, and you're holding it in place. So now that's sticking out there. And then from there, I would just do exactly what we did. Take your jaw. Okay, so come around here, please. Irvin's in the camera. So there's your 2 rods sticking out. So that nut is going to be sticking out here. That nut is going to be captured in here somewhere. And then your front jaw is going to be just like this. I would bevel the front. I'd bevel the sides too, and then you're not banging in against a hard corner. You're going to have your holes drilled the same way. That hole has to be big enough so that when this closes, that nut will slip inside it so that this will go up tight. And don't drill all the way through. If you want, you can add those bushings. You don't need to. And you're certainly use your springs to keep that pushing back for you. And that's it. Easy, 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 easy. Now, let me tell you about who Dom is. Which class was Dom in? April? No, he was in with John. May? Was Dom in May or June? I think it was in June. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, John's not dated. Yeah, June. It was in June class. So, Dom is a wounded combat Marine EOD. That stands for Explosive Ordnance Disposal. And those guys, their job was to go out and find the bomb, roadside bombs, improvised explosives. I'm missing a spring. I guess I know it's inside. And take care of it before it hurt anybody else. So Dom was missing, Dom had one of his legs blown off. He happened to be in a class with John Hayes. John, they were actually in the hospital at the same time. John was also a a Marine EOD. John had both legs missing, and essentially destroyed his right arm, and he's right-handed. So he doesn't have a whole lot. I know he told me he's got some cadaver nerves in here that give him some feeling in his hand, just partial nerves. And anyway, so he's had to use his left hand. Well, as the class went, Dom was getting a little bit depressed because he thought everybody else was beating him, going faster than he was. They're always guys that are so competitive, especially when you put 4 branches of the military in the same room. Well, John, that's his dovetail. Come over, have a close look. So here's the guy working in a wheelchair, having to work with his left hand because of the damage. And his dovetail was phenomenal. I just said, this is incredible, John. So I know you want to take it home, but I'd rather have it on my wall. So there it is. Anyway, back to Dom. So Dom was doing what we call a bench hook. So they always have an option to do 2 different projects. They can either do a candle box or a bench hook. Now, I should be able to put my hands on it, but I can't for some reason, because it's probably out here. So in order to make the story make sense, I got to grab it. A bench hook is made out of 3, here it is right here, 3 pieces of wood, dovetailed on either end, but on opposite sides. Every once in a while, somebody makes a little short table because they put it on the wrong side. So what's unique about it is they've milled the piece by themselves. They started with rough lumber, and they processed all of it flat, smooth, square with hand tools. And then they cut dovetails in the 2 different ends. And the purpose of this tool is it sits on your bench like that. This acts as a cleat on the front, and it becomes a sacrificial instrument. So if I had to come in and cut this board, I don't want to cut my bench, I would hear there'd be a slot cut in this. This one hasn't been done yet. And I would go ahead and I would use that saw. So this is going to get marked up because it's going to get sawn into, but that's better than having it happen to your bench. Anyway, so when Dom was done, I looked at his piece. I looked at his dovetails on both ends. And I said, Dom, I cannot critique this. I cannot find anything wrong with it. It is perfect. You didn't make any mistakes. It is perfect. And I said, if I did it like that every time, I'd be proud of myself. So I only wish that I had it mounted on my wall. It was fantastic work. And that's just credit to him and that whole Marine thing. Get the job done, do it right. So now I can't mention those guys without talking about Omar. Omar was also a Marine EOD. And all 3 of these guys were actually in the hospital at the same time. And that's Omar. Omar was 1 leg blown off, the other one destroyed, and both arms, one part of his hand was blown off and his fingers, the other blew all the flesh off his arm, took out his elbow. That was reconstructed. He had muscle from his back that they put in here. And I mean, he only had 2 fingers and a thumb that worked on this hand. And he insisted on doing it himself, and that's what he produced, and it was awesome. Absolutely incredible. Big tip of the hat to those EOD boys. Following the footsteps of some other fantastic EODs that we've had, Jeff O'Connor, Kevin Burris. These guys know how to do it. Frick, is Kip ready?
Yeah, but before I bring Kip on, Jake wanted me to show a picture of the Moxon Vise on the bench. He sent a picture, so it's on the screen now.
Can I come over and see it?
Sure.
In case I need to comment. Moosey, what's your lace? Where is it?
Right there.
Okay, so it's on the end. Yeah. Now, the only downside I see to this is that that's going to leave the hand wheel sticking up above the top of your bench, which may create an issue at some point when you're working. The diameter is such that I don't think you can mount them any lower. So if you had to, you can easily take it off. I mean, it's unwind 2 pieces and put the vise underneath. Just watch out for the 2 threaded rods that are sticking out there. So that might become a really good modification. In fact, we might even be able to add that to our product line, offer a bench with that already done on the end. So Kip's here?
Kip is here.
All right, so I'm going to introduce, I've already introduced him, but I'm going to introduce him again. Kip Christensen's been a friend of mine for probably longer than we care to admit. I think I met him back in the mid-'80s. So, in fact, Kip was Dale Nish's assistant. This is Dale Nish. He's my mentor. He and his wife both have passed away, but Dale is a world-renowned wood turner and author. Ran the woodworking program at BYU for a number of years. I was his assistant, and Kip had been his assistant one before me. Kip went on to be a professional instructor, teacher, has taken wood turning to a new level. He introduces a level of precision to wood turning that I don't think was there before. And he does it also applying the science of drying wood and seasoning your wood so that you're not dealing with pieces that are continuously moving, which allows you to do, as I mentioned, make a lidded container like that, and the lid doesn't jam when you rotate it. And it still fits like it did the day I got it from him, which has been quite possibly coming up on 40 years ago. Not quite 40, but close. Anyway, so Kip's coming here the first week of September. He's doing 2 classes. He's doing a spindle turning based beginner type spindle turning class on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. First Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in September, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday is an advanced class where we'll focus on bowls and lidded vessels and things like that. More of an advanced class. So I'm going to go over here so I can see him. Kip, you there?
Yes, I am, Rob. How are you doing?
Dandy, how are you? What are you looking at, the sky?
No, I was just looking at my computer for a second. I guess you can see me, but I can't see you.
I can see you. Tell us, any questions for him yet?
Not yet, no.
If you have any questions, turning related questions or anything for Kip, fire away. In the meantime, I'm going to ask him, just describe a little bit of what can somebody honestly expect. Let's say they're coming for the all 6 days, both classes, 6 days. I come in as a novice, a high level of interest. What can I expect by the end of 6 days?
Well, we'll cover a lot of material, and you'll have a lot to work on when you go home. But in the meantime, hopefully you'll make a lot of progress. And I'm guessing that many of the people on this call have taken workshops from you. Is that correct, Rob?
Probably a few.
Yeah, and so have an understanding of what a jump start you can get by learning from someone who has some experience, and particularly when it comes to tool selection and sharpening of tools and then use of tools, because without some good guidance that way, it's easy to spend a lot of time doing procedures that aren't the best practices. And so I've really focused during my time, and I've been engaged in the wood turning movement since the late 70s, actually. Now, that kind of dates me, I guess. But
it does. And I'm doing the math.
What's that?
It does. I'm doing the math right now.
Yeah, but during that time, I actually haven't been a professional turner. I've been a teacher. I taught at Brigham Young University for 32 years there, and I taught woodworking, and that included wood turning. Also taught furniture design, and so I understand furniture. But what I've learned is that if you can apply some basic principles and get them down quickly, that you can get muscle memory that will help you, everything that you do become a lot more efficient, and you can get from point A to point B just a lot faster. People that learn on their own can certainly do that, and I know people who have. but it's easy to spend a lot of time turning on something that doesn't help you learn the techniques very much of turning. And so my hope in my workshops is to take someone who has little or no experience and give them some things that they can do that will help them develop the techniques and the muscle memory so that anything they do after that will come a lot quicker.
Can I want to jump in and just, you said something that triggered a thought. So my first experience with professional turning, I thought I knew how to turn because my father, I had a lathe, but my lathe was a shopsmith. And my father had lathe chisels, but these guys just scraped. And I was doing one of the first projects at BYU, and it was a coffee table that had it had 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 legs. The center section had a leg, and the outside had legs. Anyway, Dale saw me turning these legs, and didn't respond like he could have. Very nicely said, "Would you like a little help with this?" And the difference, he taught me, and because I had a high level of interest, I picked up on it quickly. But the difference between what it would have looked like had I done it with what I knew about turning compared to what it looked like after he showed me how to use a skew chisel, and your beads were nice and tight. They came in and they literally met at a point as opposed to the width of a scraper between them. And your coves, nice, all this stuff, nice and clean. My goodness, what a difference. So my interest in turning is as it applies to furniture. I hate having to buy knobs, so I turn all the knobs so I can do the shape I want out of the wood that I want. Anything associated with furniture that's round, I can turn it. So I'll interject something else too. So I brought you up here a year ago and had you teach my guys, and now 2 of them do all the turning. I no longer have to turn chisel handles, Kerf X10 handles, and that's the reason why I brought you. So both of those guys that took the 5-day class were able to become competent turners using a skew chisel, which I think is a big deal. Now I'm going to ask you to do something. Give a little better bio than what I did, would you please?
Well, yeah, and I didn't hear your bio. I know that there's some information written on the website, which is good and it's accurate, but I feel really fortunate because I was introduced to turning while I was relatively young. I wasn't in high school, but I was at the beginning of my college years and fortunate to be introduced to Dale Nish early on. And during that time, in 1978 or 79, he conducted the first Utah Wood Turning Symposium, which was held there at Brigham Young University, and it became the longest running wood turning symposium in the world. It was done for actually 39 years, and then unfortunately it was discontinued after that. But during during all of those years, but particularly during the first years, I was introduced to turners, the best turners from all over the world, because they would come to demonstrate at the symposium. And so I was really fortunate to rub shoulders with the best that there were around. And to
drop some of those names.
Well, there was Dale Nish. I know that David Ellsworth came out, Ray Key, Stuart Mortimer, Alan Batty. I've got actually a really nice collection of turnings from many of the best turners in the world, and most of them are ones that I met at the Utah Wood Turning Symposium. And so anyway, that's how I was introduced to it initially, and I took to it right away. From one of the first turnings I ever did, I just recognized that it was something that I loved to do, and I've been doing it ever since, just about as much as I can sneak in.
How many books have you written?
Well, I've co-authored 5.
And how many videos?
8.
And as well as a line of tools. You've also developed your own line of tools too, correct?
Yes.
And that's my business is knowing how to do something, and then knowing the customer that's going to be using the tool, and then mating the tool to the customer. And I think you've done the same thing. So Kip told me, I didn't know about this, but in preparation for him coming up, he says, you need to get my parting tool. It'll be the best parting tool you've ever used. Well, how can you vary a parting tool? I didn't realize that until I got it, and now I admit, yeah, it is. It's easy to sharpen, and it performs so much better than the old diamond point parting tools that everybody else has been forced to use over the years. And even though I had modified mine as per Dale's instruction, Kip's takes it to a different level altogether. So if you're interested in this, you've got an opportunity to meet an instructor, a highly accomplished artist, as well as a tool designer and inventor. So this is somebody that has thought through the process, but also has the experience in teaching people, which has enabled him to overcome challenges that beginning turners have by improving the tools. I like to think that's what we do as well.
Yeah, and Rob, you mentioned, well, you asked at the beginning what they would expect to maybe learn through the courses. One of the things I hope that they would learn is how to sharpen and use the tools efficiently. And I use primarily traditional tools. I do use scrapers when they're more appropriate, particularly on the inside of a box or turning end grain in the bottom of a box. But for spindle turning and for bowl turning, I use traditional tools, which would be bowls, skew, and parting tool. And hopefully by the end of 3 days or even more so 6 days, people would be pretty proficient and comfortable and have some level of confidence using those real primary tools that have been used for centuries in turning, particularly the gouges and the skew.
I'm trying to show the bowl, that Claro walnut bowl that you did when you were here. You can't see it, but I can. Any questions?
Yeah, question from Chris in the chat for you, Kip. What wood is terrible to turn?
Well, there are definitely woods that are easier to turn than others. But as far as woods that are terrible to turn, I think that some are that are the least enjoyable to turn are ones that are quite soft or that have a dense early wood and a dense late wood and a very soft early wood, so that they're not consistent in density across the end grain face, and so they don't cut the same or sand the same as you turn them. But
give an example. Red oak?
No, not red oak. Red oak turns actually really quite nice, but some of the softwoods like fir, old growth redwood is wonderful. New growth redwood is not so good. But the firs and some of the pines, you can turn them, but they don't turn as clean. Another one that's difficult to work with, but can actually be beautiful, is figured poplar. It's long. The fibers are long and stringy. They don't cut as good as most other fibers, but if you get figured poplar, it actually looks beautiful once it's sanded up.
Are you talking tulip?
Tulip wood?
Tulip poplar?
I'm talking the figured poplar that we get here in the western part of the United States. But so I don't know that I can answer that question the best, because I've really spent my time more looking at what I want to turn. So I generally prefer woods that are pretty fine grained, fairly hard, consistent in density, but that have some character.
On that theme, give a suggestion of a couple of species that would be really good for somebody that's learning to turn.
Yeah, any of the maples. The maples are consistent in density typically, and they cut nicely. They respond to the tools well, and they're easy to get, and they're not too expensive. And it doesn't matter really whether if you're learning the techniques of turning, it really doesn't matter whether the wood is green or partially dry or fully dry. Maple is one I'd recommend for that.
Another question for you, Kip. If someone has a small shop, is there a specific small benchtop lathe that you recommend?
Well, that's a little bit more difficult question to answer, because it depends on what they want to make. And, turners, and it's like any woodworker or anything you get into, you can spend a lot of money on tools that you may not need. So I think that one of the most important things is to determine what type of turning do you want. Do you want to do bowls, or do you want to do spindles, maybe boxes or hollow work? And those types of things would more determine the selection of the lathe than just generalities. But, as far as bang for the buck, if you take good care of it, a jet mini or midi lathe is a pretty good lathe for the money. But there are actually a lot of good lathes out there if you take care of them.
Okay.
Where does the jet mini lathe top out when it comes to turning bowls?
Well, not as much as it advertises. So, and this is typical of all mini lathes or midi lathes. Pretty much most benchtop lathes, they'll advertise that they have a swing of, that you can turn a piece that's 12 inches in diameter or 14 inches or whatever it is. But the truth of the matter is, and for spindle work, you don't need to have as heavy a bed, because you're typically not using wood that is really unbalanced as much as you do with bowl work. But when you put a bowl blank on the lathe, you've usually got a fair amount of imbalance there in the weight, whether that's in the moisture or in the hardwood and sapwood side of the bowl. And you just need to have a certain amount of mass to keep it from vibrating and to keep it stable. And so generally that just requires just more mass. I remember Dale telling us, you probably remember this, Rob, that he would say back in the old days that you can buy woodworking equipment by weight. Basically, generally speaking, the heavier it was, the more stable it was going to be, and the better it was going to be over the long term.
Yeah. Per pound. Any other questions on there?
Nope.
All right, wrap this up, Kip, by telling us what's the most favorite piece that you recall doing?
Oh boy!
Have you got one?
No, I don't know that I have one. I can think of a number of pieces that when I was working on them, I was just pretty excited about them, but one of my favorite memories, I guess, well, I'll tell you a couple quick memories. One is one of the first times I remember turning on the lathe. I was working in the shop at BYU. I really didn't know hardly anything about what I was doing because I hadn't had any formal instruction other than how to mount a piece on the lathe. And I put on a cherry branch that was wet. So it was green wood, cherry wood. And if you've ever turned that, you'll know that it just cuts very nicely and the shavings peel off and it smells good. And I was doing that. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was getting reasonably good results with not good techniques. And it was fun and it smelled good. And I remember thinking at the time that was the turning that I had just discovered was going to be something that would be significant to me in my life. And I also remembered thinking right after that at the same, basically the same moment, is I wonder if this will ever get old to me. And it's never gotten old, and it has been something that's been important to me in my life, and it's been good to me, and I still do as much turning as I can. But I remember one time I came home with a piece that I had turned out of box elder burl, and it was a natural edge, and it was possibly the first natural edge piece that I did, at least the first one that I remember coming out well. And I was just really excited about that. And my wife recognized that, and she's reminded me about that a couple of times. So, we all do, when we do creative work, I think sometimes we do really get some feeling and some passion for what we're doing. And there have been a number of times in my life when I've felt that from time to time. And quite often it's been when I've just been working on developing something new and had some breakthroughs.
Awesome. You got Jeff O'Connor coming out there. He'll be a handful.
Well, we'll see. I'm looking forward to it.
Don't hesitate to get physical with him if you have to.
Okay, well, I'll keep that in mind. I've got a vise on the end of my bench that if I need to use it, maybe I can do that.
All right, let's fill that class. Thank you, Kip.
Yes, I hope that's been helpful. If anybody has any questions and they want to contact me individually, if that's okay, Rob, I mean, you're welcome to give them my contact information.
I will do that. I'll
Okay.
get Frick to post it. All right,
Okay.
we'll speak again shortly.
Okay.
See
Thanks,
you.
Rob.
You want to have a really enjoyable. I try to do that when we teach our classes here. I want them to go home with the woodworking experience, but I also want them to go home with a life-changing experience. Now, a lot of that comes from being around the vets, but we share wonderful meals together. It's hard work. Where Jeff was telling me, we run the class from 7 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, for real. And Jeff and I were speaking about that just the other day, and he said, when you're not around on Monday night, and the guys are like, wow, when do we get the break? He goes, nope, this is boot camp. So, but in that time, they nail some stuff. You see the dovetails behind me. It's not like they're going to go home and do a worse job. They're only going to get better. And same thing with Kip. You'll have enough time on the lathe that you'll be able to take skills home, that you will literally be able to cash in and be able to do stuff that you wouldn't have thought possible. Really, really good skill to have, because if you think about it, round pieces make up a big part of a lot of our furniture. I turn bowls. It's not my thing. I'd rather cut a row of dovetails, but I really like being able to make, how come I can't turn and point to something? Normally I have a piece of furniture sitting here with knobs on it that I've turned on the lathe. Yeah, you have to go to the other room to see them. Just trust me, I do. Any questions, Frick? Caught you off guard? Sleeping?
Well, I was switching my phone from the call to the questions here. Mr. Ben in the chat says, what is a magnetic cup, and why did you use cups with your magnets in your Moxon Vise video?
So magnets, you buy neodymium magnets. They always offer, I'm looking for them, but I can't find it. They always offer a steel cup. I thought I had some right here. Let me fish around a little bit. It's a steel cup that the inside diameter of the cup is the same as the magnet. So if it's a 3/8 magnet, the cup will be a 1/2 inch in diameter. The 1/2 inch magnet that we use most, the cup is 5/8 inch in diameter. And the cup has a hole in the bottom where it's been countersunk. I had it in my hand here a minute ago. Thanks, Angie. I'm down to my last bar. There it is right here. See if I can push this thing through without stabbing myself.
My mic was off, so for those who didn't hear the question,
Your what mic was off?
yes, the question was from Mr. Ben in the chat. He said, what is a magnetic cup, and why did you use cups with your magnets in your Moxon Vise video?
Okay, so there's the cup. So if I'm setting it flush, I'll drill a hole that the outside diameter by that depth. The cup goes down in there. There's a hole in the bottom. It's countersunk. So you can go in and screw that in place, which another good reason for the cups is just a means of being able to attach your magnets. And you want to make sure that sometimes you have to check this. You want to make sure that that screw sits below the surface, so that when you put the cup in, it's not sitting on top of the screw head. It's actually sitting on the base of that recess in the cup. And it's designed so that sits flush. And I don't remember exactly how much, but it substantially increases the strength of the magnet. It has something to do with the force. May the force be with your magnet. Next, Frick. Big show. So I think Luther's on tonight. I want to just take a second and thank a bunch of people that are involved in this production and ultimately involved in our Purple Heart project. So Luther is the, I don't know what his title is, chairman of the board of PHP, the Purple Heart Project, which is a separate corporation. registered in Washington State. It is the fundraising arm of what we do here. And then he has on the board is Ken Anthony and Kent. What's Kent's last name? Boyce. Kent Boyce up in Ontario, and Jack Lane down in Texas. And then in Canada, there's a separate corporation, which is I don't know what it's called actually, the Purple Heart Project Canada maybe. And Ken Anthony is the chairman, and Luther and Kent and Jack are board members. So those guys do a lot of work. And they are also involved in gathering all of the names for the soldiers that apply, and the selection process, booking the flights, Luther tracking them to get here and to return. Just a ton of behind the scenes work that you wouldn't know. And most of those guys are on here. Now Jack is also the what do we call Jack? What do we call Jack? He's in charge of the Bench Brigade, which is an organization that currently has over 300 volunteers in 6 different countries. And what they do is they build the benches for the guys that come to our class. So to date, I know we've built and delivered over 150 benches. It may be getting closer to 160, 170. And that's a lot of work, coordinating all of that, and some great stories of success with that program. And then Angie's on, and Angie and her sister Lynn, they take care of all of our Purple Heart t-shirts. They do all the packaging. Angie covers for when Jake is away. Jake's away a lot. So Angie's overworked because Jake takes too many holidays. But fortunately, Ken's there to cover the slack. Ken Anthony is also, not only is my shop manager, but Ken also chairs an organization with me and Al McNeil, a wounded vet that works here, called Sleep in Heavenly Peace, where we build beds for children that don't have a bed to sleep in. So Ken came to me about 5 years ago saying he's looking for maybe 1 or 2 days work. I gave him 1 or 2 days work every day. Moose just left, but Moose is here. He always donates the dead cat sweaters. He always brings one up for every vet in the program. And then we give away 3 at the end of the night. Chris is here. Chris is our engineering arm. He's done a lot of what we do and a lot of the stuff that we make. Chris has a hand in. And then Jake's away on vacation. So Irvin, who's a lifelong friend of Frick's, is behind the camera. And Frick's over there. You hear him all the time. Am I forgetting anybody? Regulars? We got a lot of combat wounded vets on as well. Gina's probably on there. Yes. Gina's in charge of customer service, and she works all the time and keeps things humming. My goodness. My wife suggested I hire her, and that has been a smart move. Thanks, Gina. What am I forgetting, Frick? Any more questions?
I'm waiting for Luther to send me some more. He's been answering most of them, but not really.
Tell him to stop answering and send them through. By the way, you can make donations. I'm sure they've been putting that up. And for every $1,000 that gets donated, we'll give away approximately a $300 prize. And you don't have to donate to get a prize. You just have to be on. There's no tie-in between those two. But we appreciate your donations. Your donations help in bringing soldiers to our program. Our goal for this year is $350,000. That's the estimated cost of doing the 6 classes with 42 combat wounded vets, 7 in each class. Our first quarter, we raised almost $100,000, which put us ahead of schedule. But I don't think we raised enough in our second quarter to stay on that track. So it's always a money issue. But you know what? You get to donate money to a great cause that changes people's lives. These guys, most of these guys walk out of here a different person than when they came. All right. Any questions?
Let's wrap it up.
Are we going to wrap it up early?
Yeah.
Give you the night up early? Okay.
We're doing a draw, right?
Yeah.
I don't have the donation amount though.
Did you happen to see any vets I need to say hello to?
I know Jeff's here.
Jeff was on, Jeffrey O'Connor, and Dom was on.
Yep, Don was there.
Anybody else?
I didn't get them to like specifically mention
shout
it.
out.
Andrew Whitaker.
Oh, Andrew's on.
Yeah.
Andrew. If you any final questions on building or using a Moxon Vise, speak up, and I'll tell you whatever I think I know. This was a good idea, and this will certainly fill the shortcoming we had. By the way, I put that on with a piece of piano hinge. You could use anything, but that was the easiest. And I cut that angle so that this would lay on the bench. Just makes the math easy. Then you're just figuring from the height from the bench up to here. And this, how did we do that, Frick? No, I can never remember when I tried to explain it. This is critical so that you get that gap, or you end up having your piece at the right height, and it keeps it standing plumb, which is a big deal. I can't remember how we did this. So that height, oh yeah, right. Now I got it. So this height has to be from here to the top of the vise minus the thickness of this piece. Because that piece sits like that when you're putting your board in. When you put it over here, it has to sit down here, so this and this are the same height. So that's how you determine that. Real simple math. And when it goes away, I could have put, I should have. I could have put another magnet on the bottom side here, just one, and a screw here so that when that closes, that stays put. Like that. All right, did you find out where we are?
No.
All right, well, let's give away our 3 dead cats, and if somebody comes up and sends us a number between now and then, otherwise we'll just add it to our next live. I can't think of anything else I've forgotten. You pulling them up? So this is for a dead cat sweater. I actually have one here, so I'll show you what it is. For those of you that might be new, so Moose had his supplier. We found out about this sweater a long time ago. It's super light. Chris thinks they put heaters in them, but it's warm enough. I can wear it outside, and when it's minus 15 Celsius, this is all I need. And yet, on a cool summer evening, it'll keep you warm too. Just fantastic, nice and light. And it's got the Purple Heart logo on there. Moose's supplier did that up. Didn't charge him anything. So we give away 3 of these every time we do the Saturday Night Live.
Okay, so our donations are at $1,500.
Okay, well, we get to give away one. That's good. Somebody wants to bump that up to $2,000 so we can give away another prize. In the meantime, I'll come up. I forgot to think about what prize is, so I'll come up with that before we're done. But let's give away the 3 dead cats.
All right, we want 3.
Dead cat number 1 going to.
Here we go.
Where are we sending it?
It's drawing. Taking its time. First one's going to be Felix Seibel in Germany.
Oh, Felix, I think is this the first time we've sent one to Germany? Maybe. Congratulations, Felix.
Second one's going to Eric Sicard in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Eric?
And remember, for the winners, email the email address on the bottom of the screen.
You need to email info at...
No, support at RobCosman.com.
Support at RobCosman.com.
Tell them your size and
Tell
your
them
address.
the size you want and your address.
Okay, third winner is Christopher Jones in Illinois.
Hey, Christopher. Congratulations. All right. Excuse me. What are we going to give away?
A Moxon Vise, maybe?
Ooh, good idea. We're going to give away a completed Moxon Vise. Are you ready?
All right, let's go back up here. Just want one.
A completed Moxon Vise. Retail value, I think, is right around $300. By the way, all the vices, including the Schobergs, anything to do with the Vise is on sale 15% off until the end of the month. So if you're interested, if you're thinking about getting these, it's a good chance to save some money.
All right, here we go.
Where are we sending it? I'm so excited. So nervous. Where is it going?
It is going to Mahesh Chander in Georgia.
Mahesh Chander.
Yep.
Where in Georgia?
Just says Georgia,
said Georgia?
USA.
Congratulations.
He'll let us know.
You'll be cutting dovetails like a pro in no time. All right, is that it? When are we on again?
Not for a while.
Why? Quitter.
You're in Florida. I'm doing weddings the next 3 weekends.
Come on, frick.
Oh,
I
no,
didn't like
actually,
doing that.
No, actually, I think Luther has us in for a Friday.
Oh, because you're on a Saturday. That's good.
I think the 16th, but
Okay.
we'll find out.
That you just reminded me. So I'm going to be in Florida next weekend. I'm going to be at the Woodcraft store in Orlando on Saturday, August 2nd?
Give me a second.
3rd, August 3rd.
Saturday's the 3rd, yeah.
August 3rd, Orlando Woodcraft from 10 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. Emphasis is going to be dovetails. It's free. Take advantage of that. Always accepting donations to Purple Heart Project. Love to see you. And then on Monday, which would be the 5th, I'm going to be at the Tampa Woodcraft. It's in Orlando. It's in Clearwater Beach, and I'll be there from 2 in the afternoon till 7 in the evening. Same topic, dovetails, anything you want, but the focus will be on dovetails. So there's 2 opportunities if you're in the southeastern United States. Do we have anything else planned? Our next PHP class is, I think, the 3rd week in September. Staff wanted August off, don't know why. But we can't complain because the food's fantastic. Is that it, Frick?
That is it. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for helping out. Everyone that's on there, you know who you are. Thank you to the vets who've been throughout our program. You enhance our lives tremendously. Thank you for your service. Let us thank you for the service. If you know a combat wounded vet, please let them know about our program so they can apply. We are certainly not overloaded by any stretch. I think we only get 3 or 4 applications for every spot that we have to fill. That's 42 spots each year. And if you don't get in, try again. I think of Danny Bell. I think Danny got accepted on his possibly his 4th time trying. And great guy. Helicopter pilot with the 160th Night Stalkers. Big shout out to Danny Bell. All right, guys, we will see you hopefully in a couple of weeks. Have a nice summer. Stay safe, make smart decisions, and get in the shop. Don't let the heat keep you out. See you.